live here any second.
Sounds good.
Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from Free State, Colorado, and I hope you're doing well. Michael, how are you tonight?
Brandon, I'm doing good. Ready for another exciting week at the Colorado Legislature.
There's so much happening right now, folks. It's absolutely crazy. We're in the kind of the home stretch, you know. We just had the budget week, so that really kind of is a dividing point, really. And I mean, when you think about it, it's only about 4 weeks left in the legislative session. I mean, we're pushing the limit, 4.5 weeks, something like that. So we're right there. So it's going to be fast and furious these last several weeks. It's really worth paying attention to. There's going to be a lot of craziness. There's so many big bills. As I was kind of updating the slides for tonight, I realized, my goodness, there's so much important legislation, so many big bills, so many priorities for the legislators and the governor that we have not seen come through the legislature yet. I mean, not seen really make a lot of progress. So it's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on everything, see how it's going. And yeah, it's a lot going on. Michael, how much attention did you pay to the recent Republican state assembly? Did you pay attention to that?
Oh my gosh, I tried the best I could because not only did we have the state assembly, also DU was playing in the national championship game at the same time. So my attention was split because absolutely I want to pay attention to a national championship game, especially for someone a local team. Uh, but absolutely, it was wild to see what was going on. From lots of delays to miscounted credentials. It was very dramatic yesterday down in Pueblo. A lot of exciting things happening, some good, some bad. It was interesting to see some vote totals come out in unexpectedly. For example, Scott Bottoms, who we've had on the program before, he actually won the top line for the gubernatorial race. And I know that's the one race that everybody's paying attention to. It was exciting to see a good Republican Liberty leader like Scott Bottoms take the top line. Uh, Also seeing people that we know. I know Brandon, you've interviewed Jim Wiley in the past. He was able to win the top line, or he was able to come out as the lone victor out of Assembly for Secretary of State. So that was interesting to see, as well as Senator Mark Baisley, who we had on just a few weeks ago. So I was really excited to see Senator Mark Baisley come out on top as well.
Yeah, Sean Pond was awesome as well, but I'm glad Mark Baisley ended up taking it just with his experience, his knowledge. Like you said, we've talked to him plenty of times. He'd make an incredible U.S. senator, and the fact that he doesn't have to fight in a primary coming up, is pretty good because then he can save his money, save his time, and really focus on the general. He doesn't have to worry about going through the primary election. So that's great for Senator Baisley. He's, as we know, one of the most pro-liberty legislators in the entire state government. But really in the Senate, him and Linda Zamora Wilson are really the top two. So, it's sad to see him leave the legislature because he's been a great voice for liberty there. But, he being the most pro liberty senator for a long time, it's great to see him as being the actual nominee. And that's kind of some of the stuff that gives me hope, I guess. It's like, okay, we have, like say, think of the Liberty scorecard, like we have Senator Baisley, who's the top senator, who's always winning awards from the Colorado Union of Taxpayers, other organizations. Same with Scott Bottoms, Representative Bottoms. So it's like the two of the most pro-liberty records that we've seen in the legislature because we pay attention, folks. I know we got a lot of great people watching tonight who also pay attention to the legislature, but Michael and I really dig in. Maybe call it an obsession, if you will, but really keeping an eye on what's happening down there. So to see two of the people we see every day down at the state legislature fighting for our freedom and our rights become two of the top candidates coming out of the General Assembly or the state assembly this last weekend. It's kind of encouraging. I'm not too surprised. I thought it was going to be Scott Bottoms and Victor Marks. We're going to be the only two to make it out of it. It was very close, about 130 votes difference, delegate votes between the two. As you said, Michael, Representative Bottoms did better than Victor Marks. But as Victor Marks is being a brand new to the system, and he mobilized a lot of people, people became delegates just who never would have participated otherwise, just for him. So there's a lot of excitement around his campaign that way. So that's very encouraging to see the excitement that people are having and the opportunities that are in front of us. Of course, Michael, we're more focused on the legislature than with these executive level races because we see some of these bills, folks, only passing with 2 or 3 votes, getting out of committee with a couple votes. And really, folks, this is the big takeaway here. If you don't watch the rest of tonight, just know that if we flip 4 state Senate seats, 5 state House seats this year, that could radically transform and fundamentally change the composition of our state government, our state economy. So many of the laws and bills that we talk about every week. So, the governor, it's a big hill to climb, folks. When Heidi Ganahl ran 4 years ago, she lost by about 500,000 votes, 500,000 votes to Jared Polis. Now, totally different scenario now. Don't get me wrong. Not people aren't as excited about Bennett and Weiser. We'll see which one makes it, but most people are not going to be as excited. They don't have as high approval rating as probably Jared Polis did back then. So there's opportunity there. Don't get me wrong, but really flipping the legislative seats is huge and really exciting. And of course, we're going to talk about some of the bills tonight that are some of the good, the bad, and the ugly that's going through the state capitol this year, or this week. So yeah, Michael, any other thoughts before we jump into the slideshow here?
Oh man, it's just all I'll say is we with 639 bills already introduced, and we have a few weeks to go in session. Uh, I don't want to say I cannot wait, but I'm very curious what's going to happen, what kind of games they're going to play, because we saw a lot of games happen this week with the long bills passing. They limited debate to an hour. That being said, Rep. Brandy Bradley, who we've had on this week, I think it should be noted that she was successful in getting the long bill, which is also known as House Number 1410, getting read aloud, all 610 pages worth, which took, I believe, 24 hours for them to read, with the addition of them suspending the legislation and the reading for the day, where they were able to at least go home, and then come back and start up and resume reading the bill. So that way we have an opportunity to hear all of the things that they are doing down at the legislature with this upcoming long bill that was passed by the House and is now advancing to the Senate.
Yeah, the budget was definitely, the biggest news story this last week. So the entire state legislature, the state house was tied up with the budget this last week. Now it moves into the Senate. So really, if you're paying attention to the state Senate this week at the legislature, it's really going to be all about the budget. Yeah, as you said, Michael, there was a lot of controversy. Representative Bradley basically, so frustrated with Republican Party leadership, frustrated with the Democrats, of course, decided to have the bill read at length, which is her prerogative. But it did mean that the legislators worked on Saturday. The House Democrat leadership didn't have to do that. They could have let all the legislators go down to the convention or spend time with their families or whatever. They could have waited till Monday. Sure, it delays the Senate a day, but big deal. With everything else going on, it doesn't change things that much, really. So lots and lots of news, and it's such an interesting point too, because really the budget is really the only constitutionally mandated thing. We heard Representative DeGraff talk about this last week. The budget is really the only constitutionally required thing for the legislatures to do every year. They don't have to pass these 500 bills. They really don't. There's nothing requiring them to do so. So really, for them to spend, now I get it, the JBC, the Joint Budget Committee, spending months working on the budget. It's a full-time job basically just to work on the budget for them. But really, to have the whole House only spend, 3+ days, a week or so on the budget itself, and that's a $48 billion budget. There should really be more time spent on that, and maybe less time spent on all this other ridiculousness. So I think that's important for people to understand, important for people to know, and to see it there. And I do want to give a shout out to my dad. It's his 70th birthday today, so happy birthday, Dad!
Happy
And
birthday.
yeah, but you ready to jump into the slideshow here?
Absolutely, Brandon.
Perfect, perfect. Awesome. So, folks, this is what we're calling week 14, because we're including the first week, first Wednesday when the legislative session started back in January. So this is the 14th week. April 12th, there's been 639 bills, memorials, and resolutions introduced in the state legislature this year so far, an absolutely absurd amount. You may be asking yourselves, how do we have 100 legislators be able to digest, understand, debate, know the merits, the good, the bad between all these bills, discuss the unintended consequences that are possible? They can't. They can't. They have 120 days for 100 legislators to really fully understand 639 bills, memorials, and resolutions. Totally, totally impossible task. And ultimately, that's part of the reason why we have so much bad legislation coming out of Colorado, because they just push so much. There's so much. It's not necessary. So craziness, folks. But yeah, any other thoughts on the number of bills or where we're at in the session so far, Michael?
I think you made a very good point, Brandon. When when legislators do not have the opportunity to properly vet bills, sometimes they're gonna produce a bad vote. Nobody's gonna have a perfect record. I mean, even Scott Bottoms, who's leading the Liberty scorecard so far for this session, I mean, he's at a what 99, which is it's absolutely impressive. But he's at a 99. I mean, there's times when you're not going to have a perfect vote every single time. And if you don't have so we need that's one thing we need to consider sometimes with some of these better reps is sometimes they just don't have the property. They're not getting the proper advice because people aren't properly vetting these. They're not able to properly vet these bills because they're constantly down at the well. And if they're not at the well, they're in committee, and we have bill after bill after bill where they have to sit in committee, and they also have families, they also have their own lives. So what time is there to properly vet 639 bills? Some of them are going to be something that you've worked on in the summer, and guess what? In the fall before the session, and now we're hitting winter, and now it's and with it being springtime, that's when session happens. So you don't have the time to get down to properly read these bills. Another thing to bring up is bills change. For example, one bill that we really loved going into this session was the Tamale Act, and become very disappointed with the Tamale Act, but bills change. So something can become a good bill and turn into a bad bill, but then you vote based on the idea that the bill that you vetted previously was a good bill, and now something's been added in that you didn't even get the chance to know, that you did not get a chance to properly vet, and then you ended up making a bad vote. And at the end of the day, is that on you? Yes, because you're the one that voted for it, but these people still don't have the time to properly vet what they need to vet. So that's a serious problem. 639 bills is way too many bills. So I'd love to see the legislature crack down on what's going down at the Capitol and what they're trying to um, enforce and enact on us without proper stakeholdering and doing due diligence.
Definitely. No, good. Well said, Michael. Couldn't agree more. And folks, the theme this week, of course, is the budget. So found this funny little budget theme here with the little cartoon pennies, piggy banks and stuff, because that's the big story at the legislature this week, just in case you're wondering there. So folks, if you can't stick with us the whole night, and if you're first time joining us, every week, Michael and I go through and talk about some of the biggest bills going through the state capitol this week. We really want to encourage your participation in our state government. You can reach out to committee members. You can show up to testify in person or even over Zoom. Folks, we need more good pro liberty individuals here in Colorado participating in our state government, showing up at committee hearings, looking these legislators in the eyes and telling them how bad their ideas are, and showing up to support good legislation as well. So this week, these are really the three biggest bills. We're going to talk about more than these. Don't worry, we're going to talk about more than these. But I always want to just give you, for the people who can't stick around, to take a screenshot now. These are three of the biggest bills going through our state capitol this week. And if it's a little bit quieter, I expect more to be added tomorrow when the session gets back in, when everybody's back there. And the budget's done in the House. They're probably going to start flooding the rest of the week towards the end of the week. So follow Free State Colorado on X, on Facebook, and I'll do my best to keep you updated. But on Tuesday, April 1st, or not April 1st, excuse me there, a little typo, April 14th, in the Senate Finance Committee at 2 p.m., Senate Committee Room 357, there's a bill we're going to get in more into depth here in a little bit. That's property tax modifications. Of course, you can expect that they're trying to add more property taxes to Coloradans. Absolutely terrible. And then, oh my goodness, this bill, Senate Bill 155, interested to talk more about that tonight. But this is a bill, and it was so crazy because the House Dems on their social media accounts and they had a little press conference, and it was so embarrassing, folks, because they had a little press conference, and you saw Julie McCuskey, and I can't remember if it was, and whoever else was helping her, Mullick, we'll get into it, Mullick or Brown or whoever. And they were like, yeah, we're going to lower home insurance. We're going to lower home insurance. And I'm like, no, you're not. I know what this is going to be because they tried this last year. And they basically create this enterprise where they're charging a fee, so a new fee on home insurance. So how are you going to lower the cost of home insurance by making a new tax, by basically creating a new tax on home insurance? And well, that because then they're going to use that tax money to go into a grant program. So it's like, rob Peter to pay Paul. Everybody pays a small amount, but then certain people are going to get even more money back. And supposedly that's going to create the system-wide effect, but that's not how it works. It never works that way. And then on Wednesday, folks, one of the best bills of the legislative session with Representative DeGraff. We had him on a few weeks ago. Definitely one of our pro-liberty rock stars down at the state government, down the state capitol, and House Bill 1250, his civil asset forfeiture reform bill. Great piece of legislation. He's been really fighting for years to try and get some sort of reform on civil asset forfeiture. This horrible process. We're going to get more into these bills as we continue on tonight, but Tuesday, Wednesday, these are some of the biggest bills going through the week, through the legislature this week during the committee hearings. Any thoughts here, Michael, before we move on?
Yeah, please, if you guys can get down to the legislature, fantastic. If you can't attend in person, please, we'd love to see we'd love to see you get down there on Tuesday. There's a couple with those big tax bills that are going to be heard in the Senate Finance Committee. Uh, really need to push back. And then on Wednesday, uh, this is a big opportunity to support Rep. DeGraff, Ken DeGraff. He's the most based legislator out there, a legislator out there. He's been pushing the civil asset forfeiture for years and for the last 4 years now. I'd love to see him get this across the finish line, especially now that he does have a Democrat that's going to improve his odds of getting this bill across the finish line. So please, if you guys can get down there and help him get this pushed through committee, um, love to see it. This is going to be a huge help for Colorado. We get it. We understand. You're already people have already uh, done their due diligence. They've already gone down to the Capitol, and it's difficult to take off work from time to time. But these are some pretty big bills. So if you can get down to the Capitol or sign up to testify via Zoom, that'd be huge. And worst case scenario, it'd be if you guys can't do either, submit some written testimony. They can at least see the stack and see that people are putting their opinions out there, uh, and they can go through and they still have the opportunity, especially as committee members before the hearing happens, they have the opportunity to go down and read through your written testimony before the hearing happens. And that very well could be the thing that sways them. I mean, I know we talk a lot of times about how these people have their minds made up, but at the same time, there are a lot of instances where legislators do not have their made up. And there are times uh, when what is said during committee hearings does sway these legislators' opinions. So don't ever give up. Please make sure that your voice is heard loud and clear down at the Capitol, however you possibly can. So appreciate everything you guys are doing. We appreciate you guys sticking with us every single week. But yeah, if you guys can what you can to support 1050 and oppose 116 and 116 and 155, that'd be huge.
Yeah, definitely, Michael. Well, and also, folks, a lot of these legislators, like we talked about, don't know all the bills, right? They just learn about it that morning. Like, okay, we got to discuss this in committee. What actually is this bill? If they're getting like emails like crazy and phone calls about a bill, they're like, oh, I better pay attention to this one because my constituents, my voters, care about this one, so I better pay a little bit more attention. So, it never hurts to be an active participant. And somebody asked in the chat, and I'll show you here real quick. If you go to co ledge or leg.colorado.gov, excuse me, leg.colorado.gov, folks, and you click in committees where it says public testimony options. Just hover over committees, public testimony options, and this is where you really sign up to testify. It's really that easy. It's go to the website, leg.colorado.gov, and then basically, yeah, you just scroll down and you can see right there. Here's all the bills that are coming up, and then you can just type in your info after you click on one and go from there. So it's really that easy, folks. Leg.colorado.gov, committees, public testimony options. So easy stuff for sure, folks. So let's talk about some of the bills going through the committee hearings this week. So this is really, as Michael was saying, your opportunity to have a voice, to show up in person. If you can, zoom in, submit written testimony, and email and call. Email and call for sure. There's so much we can all do as individuals. And, sure, one email doesn't matter, but if they get 1,000 emails about a certain bill, they're like, oh my gosh, okay, pay attention to this one. What's happening here? So it definitely makes a difference, folks. And that's what we need more of. That is for sure. So, folks, on Monday, we're going to be talking about the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee. So this is going to be 1:30 p.m. on Monday, April 13th in House Committee Room 107. So that's the first floor of the state capitol. Now this bill, this first one, you'll see it says for action only. So when you see that, folks, it means they're not having debate, which means they're not having public testimony. It means they've already gone through that process, and now they're just going to be basically amending the bill potentially, closing statements, and then basically deciding what they're going to do for voting for it or not on this bill. But I just wanted to bring this one up because this is something an opportunity you have where you can actually reach out to the committee members in the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee. This one's gotten a lot of controversy, and there's another bill like it too, but don't get me wrong. On some level, I think there's some good here because there's some horrible pesticides, herbicides, things that are being used. Of course, like Roundup comes to mind. These things that are potentially contaminating our food supply and causing issues. But nonetheless, I don't know as much about this as the farmers, as the people in our agricultural community, and it seems like they're widely opposed to this bill, Senate Bill 62, because it's going to basically you can see how this bill's been amended, right? So this bill was controversial to begin with. They actually amended the bill to strike all of this out. That's what this strike through here is. And then the italics is the new material added through the amendment process here. So this bill designates second generation anticoagulant rodicides, which are pesticides containing a list of things there as an active ingredient, as restricted use pesticides, and authorizes the Commissioner of Agriculture to restrict their distribution and use. So, I don't know too much about those, but I know a lot of people in the agricultural community are very concerned that without these types of pesticides, they're not going to be able to, keep the rodents away, basically, keep the pests away that impacts our food supply. So, listening to what they have to say about it, definitely some serious concerns, but you can reach out to the people on that committee. And folks, the legislative website is so good, so important here because you can click down, you can see what already happened with this bill. You can see, okay, wow, it already passed out of the House, already passed out of the Senate, then it went to the House, then it's back over here. So there's a lot going on with it, moving around totally. So definitely do what you can, folks, to have a voice and see what you can come up with there. Any thoughts on this one, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, this one's kind of tricky. I grew up on a farm, so I see what happens if I understand why a farmer would want to use certain pesticides. I mean, it absolutely kills your yield when you've got a bunch of rodents running around your farm, eating all your corn, all your soybeans, or your wheat, for example. Uh, but at the same time, if we're putting a bunch of product in our if we're putting a bunch of products that are gonna absolutely cause cancer for wide swaths of people, that is also an issue. So I understand where they're coming from. So there's a delicate balance here that with this bill I feel like they're going we are trampling on individual on people's rights with this bill, and I think it goes too far. I'm glad that they've kind of gutted the bill a little bit, so I understand where people are coming from on this bill, but at the same time, we have to do a better, we have to find a better way to support our agricultural community because people don't realize how important the agricultural industry is, and they kind of get dumped on a lot. And it's really funny because the Democrats come in a lot of times and say, "Oh, we're going to subsidize the industry because of things that we've done to the industry." Well, what they turn around and do is they make the problem even worse with all their subsidies. So, um, and then they create a system where you don't want to bite the hand that feeds because the only way a lot of times you're getting money is through as a farmer is and you're surviving is because you signed up to be a part of an agricultural program. Uh, when at the end of the day, 100 years ago, you used to be able to survive off of 40 acres, and now you have to have, if you truly want to survive as a farmer, you've got to have thousands and thousands and thousands of acres because of the way we artificially put harm the agricultural industry through subsidies, et cetera. And that keeps the price of food lower. At the detriment of farmers. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and that's why a bill like this is so critical for farmers, because this is going to make it so that way they produce even less yields in their fields, and that at the end of the day, that's what the farmer cares about the most is how are they going to be able to survive, keep their families' farms afloat? Because a lot of times they're in thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of debt, and the cost of equipment is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Sometimes a farmer has to spend $1 million, and then that family farms they've had for generations is no longer sustainable, and they have to end up selling everything. So it's a real problem with what we're doing with what we're doing to farms and the ag industry. So definitely don't like this bill because and I think there's another way to do it because at the same time, at the same time, like I was saying earlier, we also can't be poisoning our food supply either. So there's a delicate balance there. I'd love to see a more free market solution come about. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing anything at this time within the agricultural industry to kind of help keep our food clean, yet at the same time allow farmers to thrive and produce bigger yields.
And I just want to point out too, folks, you can see how originally this bill was just a pure prohibition from selling, distributing, applying, or using these certain types of things. And then they changed the bill. You know, there was so much, so it shows that things can change on the bill, right? The bill drafters can potentially change things. So they totally changed how they're going to do it and create it as more of a restricted use product. So there's some potential that, you know, they could regulate and allow certain maybe licensed people to do this, to kind of put some safeguards up. So I just want to point that out because so often people see these bills and they're like, oh my gosh, all hope is lost. It's like, well, not necessarily. These bills can be amended, they can change. And if there's good feedback from what they call stakeholders, you know, people who are involved in this, we see changes to legislation every year. So that's part of the reason we want you to be informed so that if you're somebody who has an expertise on this subject or any of these others, you can reach out to the legislators, talk about what's going on, and really try and make a difference. You know, that's ultimately what we can do. So interesting bill, that's for sure. Michael, I completely agree with you about striking that delicate balance. Balance, you know, there's some concerns. We definitely, as Mike was pointing out in the comments, don't want owls and other you know, eagles and raptors and stuff getting killed from this poison. So I understand that as well. Tawdry in the chat also points out, you know, people who are against any rodent poisons, and then they were invaded by mice so thick it was like what you see in Australia, and that's the reality of it too, folks. I mean, it's like I don't know, it's like the things with the wolves, the rodents, and there's all these other problems out there, and it's like you know, there's not necessarily, you know, humanity had spent a lot of time fighting to be at the top of the food chain. We don't want to give that up right away, but at the same time, we got to be smart about it. So interesting stuff for sure, folks. That bill is going to be heard here on Monday, April 13th. And then I really thought this bill was interesting. This is House Bill 1352, negligently luring bears. So this is what our state legislature spends their time with here. So check this out. Here's a little summary here. Under current law, a person is guilty of a crime of placing food or edible waste in the open with the intention of luring a wild bear. The law requires a person to be given a warning for the first violation. This bill lowers the mental state requirement from intention to criminal negligence. I don't like that. So sure, if you have an intention that you're baiting an animal, you know, a wild bear, that's probably not a good thing. But at the same time, now they're just saying you don't have to intend to do it. You could just be negligent. Maybe you accidentally left food waste out somewhere. And, you know, think of all the Colorado's mountain communities. And then also it repeals the requirement that the first offense be given a warning. I don't like that. I think it's like striking that balance, right? It's like if somebody's doing this, give them a warning first, and then they raise the fine even more. So apparently these legislators, Katie Stewart, Megan Lukens, and Janice Marshman, I think this is a serious problem where they need to totally make some changes to our state law. So, you know, under current law, you're given a warning for the first violation of placing food or edible waste in the open with the intention of luring a wild bear, right? Okay. And then the second time it happens, you get a fine and this and then it goes up for the second, third offense, right? Now, this bill will lower the crime's mental state requirement from intention to criminal negligence and removes the warning, making the first offense a misdemeanor. It also raises that fine up. So, you know, is this really the crime we should be cracking down on here in Colorado with all the other issues going on? And I get it. People need to be responsible. You know, people need to be able to make some good decisions. You know, we don't want people out there causing all this damage to the wild bear population. Everybody loves Colorado's wildlife population, but at the same time, you know, are we going to have law enforcement now with this new factual basis for this existing offense? You know, no more warnings. You got to charge the people. So here's the problem that these legislators are trying to address, and that's what's so great about these fiscal notes, folks. The fiscal notes will have a lot of background in it sometimes, and this is nonpartisan legislative staff putting this out there. Between January 2024 and March 2026, CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, issued 14 warnings for unlawfully placing food or edible waste in the open with the intent of luring a wild bear, which would be considered a misdemeanor under the bill. Because the bill also lowers the threshold from intent to criminal negligence, the fiscal notes that assumes that CPW will cite 10 individuals annually for the crime of negligently luring a bear. So basically, every year there are probably 10 people who might be found guilty of this. I mean, it seems like it's pretty much a non-issue. Don't get me wrong. 14 warnings from January 2024 to March 2026. So that's over 2 years, and it's only happened 14 times. So I don't know. kind of a waste. I get it. We got to be good stewards and be smart people. We don't want to destroy our wildlife and all this, but nonetheless, it's like, I don't know. Is this what we're doing with people here? So I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
I think this is a complete mismanagement of our state's priorities. If we want to get tough on crime, why don't we start uh, by looking at individuals who shouldn't be over here in the first place that are abusing children? I think that's a much more important place to start becoming tough on crime than going up to the mountains where maybe 10 people a year will be charged with this misdemeanor offense. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that these Democrats, I mean, it's Katie Stewart, Janice Marshman, Megan Lukens. I mean, this is just a ridiculous waste of the state legislature's time. 639 bills. This is definitely one of those bills that could have been pulled out of the calendar so we could be at least at 638. Um, I don't get why they think that this is a priority over all the other things that are happening in Colorado.
Yeah, good point. I mean, it's just interesting. I just want to bring it up to people because it's like, of all the things they're focusing on, like you said, Michael. So that's what's going on Monday on April 13th in the House. And then in the House Finance Committee at 1:30 p.m., House Committee Room 112. Here's one of the controversial bills. Of course, our state government, the Democrat majority, have been really focused on illegal immigration and really doubling down on Colorado sanctuary state status, pushing back against the Trump administration. That's been a big theme this legislative session. So on Monday, we're going to see the latest bill here, House Bill 1276. I'm sure this one's going to go late into the night unless they end up delaying it. But you have Lorena Garcia, who's literally a card carrying Democratic Socialist of America, and Elizabeth Velasco there, who are definitely on the side of Colorado sanctuary state laws here. So there's a lot of stuff this bill does. This is its first. This will be its second committee hearing. Excuse me. It did get introduced in the Judiciary Committee. Did pass out of the Judiciary Committee. Look at all these amendments they made to it. So they made several amendments here to the bill. And now here it goes into its second committee. So it'll be interesting to see the differences and the changes compared to the first draft of this bill. But let's just jump into the fiscal note here and see if this is updated here. This revised fiscal note reflects the introduced bill as amended by the House. Okay, as amended. So let's see here what this bill is going to be doing here. It establishes requirements and civil liabilities related to federal immigration enforcement. Investigation reporting by July 15th, 2026, and every year thereafter, law enforcement agencies that participate in federal multi-jurisdictional coordinated investigations that result in immigration enforcement must submit a report to the Department of Public Safety. Okay, I remember this bill here. The report includes its purpose, participants, and outcomes of these investigations and may not include personal identifying information. So every year these are going to be these reports from law enforcement agencies basically having to go to the state government saying, here's every single time we have interacted with federal law immigration enforcement. Now there's going to be a new report for them to put together. And then if the law enforcement agency does not report this to our state government, this local law enforcement agency doesn't report it, they're going to have a $50,000 fine, which goes into the legal fund for protecting illegal immigrants. You can't make this up, folks. They're going to actually fine our law enforcement departments here of up to $50,000 for failing to file a report and give that to the fund for all these trial lawyers to come in and help protect people who are in the country illegally. Crazy stuff there, folks. And then under current law, here's a second part of the bill. State agency and political subdivision employees are liable for violating personal information disclosure, and written record retention requirements are subject to a civil penalty of $50,000. The bill shifts this liability to the state agencies and political subdivisions themselves. So it's not the employees, it's them themselves. If the entity is found to have intentionally authorized or encouraged the violation or failed to take administrative steps to prevent it. So the idea here is they're trying to protect people who are in the country illegally, right? Then federal subpoenas, state agencies and political subdivisions that receive an unsealed subpoena by federal immigration authorities must inform the General Assembly. So they got to go back and report to the Lorena Garcia here, basically, and provide a copy of any fulfilled subpoenas to the CDPS within 3 days. Then the CDPS must subsequently publish the unsealed subpoena on its website within 24 hours of receiving the copy. If the state agency or political subdivision fulfills the federal subpoena, it must inform the individuals that their information has been shared with federal immigration authorities. So basically giving a heads up and some, ability for these people who are in the country legally to get away and have some idea that they're coming after them. So the state government basically kind of interceding there and trying to prevent the federal government from going after people here illegally. and then deportation transportation, prohibiting government entities and state regulated airports from transporting individuals detained by federal immigration authorities for deportation purposes. So I remember during the committee hearing, they're like, we can't necessarily, a plane lands, a federal plane lands. What are we supposed to do? Like we're supposed to tell them as a local airport here that how do they know what they're doing? This federal government plane lands and they're transporting individuals detained by federal immigration authorities. So it's going to be up to the airport authorities to deny them the ability to land or to use the airport facilities. And then, of course, these government entities and airports will be fined and $50,000 fine on the airports, which is going to the Immigration Legal Defense Fund. So absolutely crazy, folks. And there's the inspection report here about inspecting um, the detention centers for illegal immigrants. So as you can see here, folks, this bill is a crazy one. Uh, really wild stuff. I mean, this stuff's going to make national headlines if it ends up passing. Of course, this bill's been amended heavily, but nonetheless, it kind of shows you the mentality of the Democrat majority in our state government, who really want to double down to the point of saying, "Hey, we are going to we're going to take money away from local law enforcement that's paid for by the taxpayers in their local communities to protect their local communities. We're going to take money away from them and give it to a legal fund that we can use for getting illegal immigrants representation so they can stay in the country." So just take a look here, folks. Look at all these far left. These are the far left, the most far left members of our state house, and there's nobody in the state senate who's sponsoring this bill. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I could see the controversy around this bill get further amendments. We'll see what happens. Any thoughts on this one, Michael?
I think it's an absolutely massive overreach. I see this bill as picking a fight with the federal government. I'm just kind of curious where the Colorado's, the state, where the General Assembly's uh, war is going to stop. Like, how far are they going to escalate this to the point? Because we have a problem. We have some serious problems with immigration, especially after everything um, was exponentially increased within the 4 previous years before the current president. So I'm very concerned about the arrogance that these legislators seem to be working with, and allowing their ego. What I'm trying to say is I think their egos are pushing them to do something that's going to be very stupid and potentially cause an actual altercation between the state as well as federal immigration services. I could absolutely see something getting to that point with what they're intending to push. I'm also concerned. As you shared, the airport thing is just absolutely ridiculous. Uh, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to them there's no way to actually enforce what they're trying to enforce. And then because they don't have a way to enforce it, they're still going to fine everybody $50,000 for something that they can't actually enforce or have a way to understand. So where they're I don't understand how this bill's even going to pass, yet we're seeing this bill advance through the legislature. Uh, so I'm very, very concerned about this bill. I think this is going to end up in a lawsuit, but I'm afraid of what's going to happen between now and the federal lawsuit that's going to eventually come down the pike, because this is an absolutely ridiculous law, and uh, they're in the meantime, I think they're just going to try to fine everybody absolutely every possible way they can, because there's no way they're going to prevent law enforcement agencies or certain municipalities, especially in rural communities, from working with federal agencies. Because if they don't, they're also going to be dealing with fines from the feds. So what do you expect these individuals to do? I mean, you're putting our law enforcement agencies in a very terrible position. So I'm I hope this bill doesn't pass. I think this is just going to cause more problems, and it's just going to exacerbate a problem because of the egos of the General Assembly.
Well, and check this out, folks. This is interesting too. So, the House Judiciary Committee on March 17th, this bill passed on a 6-5 vote. One of the Democrats, Cecilia Espinoza, and she's one of the more pro law enforcement Democrats. She's a former judge. So, she definitely sees more nuance and more on the side of law enforcement than the typical Democrat in our legislature. But it just goes to show you, folks, this bill barely passed with one vote. It passed with one vote. So, get involved with our state legislature this year's election cycle, and flipping a couple seats could stop a bill like this. I think that's one of the important lessons here. Of course, all the Republicans voted against it, had the one Democrat join them, but nonetheless, interesting stuff to see it happen on a 6-5 vote. So, absolutely crazy. I'm sure there'll be more amendments to it. It's always a sign of a bad bill when they have to have 10 amendments to the bill. Like, oh no, we got to change it so much. So, very interesting to see what will come of this. This is one that's definitely going to make some national headlines and probably be an election issue if it ends up passing. So, interesting stuff, folks. That's House Bill 1276 being heard this Monday, April 13th at 1:30 p.m. in the House Committee Room 112. And folks, you can even click in here. If you go to the legislative website and click listen, they live stream these committee hearings now. So if you just want to be like, oh, what's going on? Let me just listen and hear all the arguments and hear what people are saying. You can click in, listen, and understand what's going on in our state government, even without participating. So, really encourage people to do that as well throughout the day to kind of listen and see what's going on. So interesting bill there. Very, very interesting bill. Also on Monday at 1:30 p.m. Now, this bill is very controversial. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of nuance here. I'll share my concerns of why I think this is potentially a bad bill. This is in the House State Affairs Committee, 1:30 p.m. in LSBA. That's the Legislative Service Building. It's just south of the state capitol. You have to enter through the basement there. This is the only bill, actually a concurrent resolution that's to be heard, and it is Matt Soper and Janice Rich. So the Democrats will probably kill this bill. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the idea of children having access to any of this stuff. That's absolutely horrendous. And one of the reasons our society is in such a bad place is because children have access to some really bad things that mess them up and cause some serious mental health issues. But this bill, folks, would basically create a ballot measure for the people of Colorado to be held at this election on November 3rd, 2026. The Secretary of State shall submit this ballot question. And here's what it would say. The General Assembly shall by law require that a person who distributes pornographic material in any form, including non-physical or intangible material or media, verify that each person who receives the pornographic material is 18 years old or older. The General Assembly shall prescribe acceptable means to verify a recipient's age, which may include any commercially reasonable methods and penalties for failing to verify the recipient's age. So, of course, the big concern is online, is digital application of this, and kids unfortunately are getting online and seeing horrible things they have no business seeing. At the same time, though, folks, I'm concerned that this puts us on the path towards digital ID. I don't like the idea of our state government having requirements for people to, because we know where this is going, folks. You have to have your digital ID to log into the internet, to log into social media, to log in to use your computer. That you're going to know exactly who you are and what you're saying. That's the ultimate end of all of this. So this is the proper rule is the parents need to be involved with these kids. This is a time old problem, with magazines and stuff going back 50, 60, 70 years, however long those things have been available, longer than that, I'm sure. So nonetheless, this is not something where I think this could have some negative unintended consequences, is what I would say. And I'm really concerned with the digital ID component of it, verifying people's ages. I don't like that idea whatsoever. So that's my thoughts on it. Don't get me wrong. The general idea of this bill is not necessarily a bad thing. But I don't know. I'm putting basically an amendment in our state constitution or a initiative in the bill. Yeah, it's in the state constitution. Add this section to it. So, what's this going to give the government more powers to do things that maybe are going to end up being bad for liberty ultimately? What do you think, Michael?
No, I completely agree. I think this is a parental rights issue. A lot of times people will use kids as an excuse to strip our liberty. And while we do need to, as you said earlier, this type of imagery is extremely detrimental to kids. It causes a lot of long-lasting consequences that follow our children for the rest of their lives because they get sucked into this stuff. And especially this type of thing is so addictive at such a young age. It's one of the most addictive things that a kid can get into. So there are, and it's so in no way am I saying it's a good thing. I completely agree that this stuff is an absolute threat to our children. But what's going to happen is once we're saying what's going to happen though is this bill is going to tell everyone it is okay to require age verification to use the internet. Because while it's this current bill is going to limit the scope of age verification to use the internet, they will use this as the hinge point to expand using internet age verification on the internet. And there will become a time when we are like other countries who require you to use your ID to verify that you are of a certain age to even use the internet. Looking up information is not something that should be um, weaponized against us. I mean, we live in a free society. Why should our so I'm very concerned about the long-lasting ramifications of this, especially when we add this in as a constitutional amendment. Granted, that means there's a higher threshold. If we're going to create a constitutional amendment, that means there's a higher, it's not just 50%, it's a 55% threshold, but still, for passage. But still, this is not something that should be in our Constitution. I know a lot of times we love to add a lot of special projects, a lot of different things to our state constitution. I would definitely say this is not one of those issues that should be entered into the Colorado Constitution. So please, let's find other ways to help society, protect kids. Um, because that is important, but this is not the way to go about it. And I'm very, very concerned about what's going to happen if this passes.
Really, ultimately, folks, if it's a requirement by law to verify age, how can you do that without some sort of legal document? You know what I mean? It's not enough to click the box, right? And say,
Hmm.
yes, right now you click the box, maybe you're shopping for a firearm online and they say, are you at least 18 years old? Or, you see websites that say that kind of thing. But then to say, nope, we need a copy of your digital driver's license. And then, who's going to have access to that information, right? And the state government's going to know everything you're looking at online. And I don't know. That's not something I think is a good idea. So that's ultimately why I think this bill is, although has probably good intentions, is very concerning. And yeah, like Victoria said in the chat there, it's parents need to be the ones starting with education at home. This is really an issue that, the government can't protect kids from anything ultimately. They can only punish people for breaking the law and steal our money. That's really all the government does. And do they have a good reason to do that or not? So it's one of those things where it's like it's not, is it even going to actually make a difference? Probably not. So, there you go. But that's kind of the thought there, folks. Tuesday. So on Tuesday in the House Transportation, Housing and Local Government Committee, upon adjournment of the House. So folks, for committee hearings where it's upon adjournment, you have to keep an eye. There's no set time. It could be 10:30 in the morning, could be noon, could be 3 p.m., could be 4 p.m. It really depends how long that is going on in the House. But I thought this bill was really interesting. I hadn't really heard anything about it on the media, so I wanted to make sure people were aware of it. It's this State and Local Noise Abatement Authority. And don't get me wrong, Representative Brooks is on there. He's awesome, definitely one of the better ones down there. But I don't know. I have some thoughts about this bill. So check this out, Senate Bill 98. Under current law, there are statewide standards for noise level limits for various time periods and areas. And noise in excess of those limits is a public nuisance. The statewide noise level limits do not apply to the use of the property for certain purposes. So this bill's extending statewide noise level limits not applying, basically, right? So it's saying basically, these people who live in residential communities, hey, if this is too loud to you, you got to deal with it. Now they're protected by state law. That's something that concerns me a bit. The use of the property owned or controlled by the state or a political subdivision of the state. So if now they're exempting our state government from saying, okay, it's too loud, it's too noisy, but hey, if it's our government doing it, they get special permission to be as noisy as they want. I don't know about that. The use of property pursuant to a permit or license that addresses sound emitted and that is issued by a local government. That's less egregious, I think, because you can have an impact on your local government. Maybe at the local level, it's important to decide where those limits should be instead of some sort of statewide policy. But check this last one out. The use of property owned or controlled by a nonprofit entity for a cultural, entertainment, athletic, or patriotic event. So you're telling me if you have a nonprofit that's having some sort of event that's quote unquote cultural or entertainment purpose, they can be as loud as they want and they're exempt from these noise level limits. I mean, we've seen issues. Gosh, what's the name of that newer stadium? I want to say it's in Colorado Springs somewhere where it's a really cool looking stadium with the fire pits and everything, but all the neighbors hate it and are complaining because they're violating the noise laws. I wonder if this has something to do with it.
Ford
But I just don't.
Amphitheater.
Is that what it is? Ford Amphitheater. I know there's a lot of controversy over that. So is this bill going to protect them? And now all the people who live there, who've lived there prior to it being built, are going to just have to deal with it. I don't know if I like that idea. I don't like the idea of the statewide standards. Leave it at the local level. Let them. Why can't they make their own decisions and make each community make do what's right for them? You know what makes sense in that level. At the same time, though, I think about Bandimere Speedway. Bandimere Speedway was an awesome facility. Thunder Mountain and Morrison, and then it was there a long time, and then these houses came in and they built up around it, and the speedway was there before the houses. But guess what? The speedway had to leave because so many houses moved in. They had a lot of people now who were complaining, and they had a majority of people in the community who wanted them out, and you can't do anything. Bandimere had to leave, and they're being relocated. They're relocating near Hudson now over here in Weld County. So I think about that, but this bill wouldn't have helped them, I don't believe, unless they had some sort of local permit or license. But again, it's really the will of the majority of the people. So I don't know. The bill does not preempt or limit the authority of a political subdivision having jurisdiction to regulate noise abatement or offer exemptions. So that's the key line there, folks. It does allow local governments to have that ultimate authority. This is really just creating the standard, is what I guess it seems. So maybe not as bad, as long as they're allowing this. The bill may increase the workload for local governments to change their ordinances or to process noise hardship permits to allow noise levels above those allowed under state law. So I don't know if it's letting the local governments do what they want. I don't know. I just don't like the idea of a statewide standard trying to force on everybody. So interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I don't know all the background and details on this, but I really wanted to make sure to share it on the live stream tonight because it's an interesting bill. And I thought the people here we need to know what's going on in the legislature, and maybe this affects you, like in the chat, if you live near Red Rocks or you live near certain parts for the amphitheater, then maybe this is something to pay attention to. So what do you think, Michael?
I mean, I think you bring up a good point. I think this bill is definitely interesting, and especially when it comes to Bandimere. Bandimere was not very far away from Red Rocks whatsoever, but because Rocks didn't have a couple, or Red Rocks, if you've ever been there, Red Rocks has a couple. The music itself faces towards the mountains, and then Bandimere itself was on the mountain on the foothill, and the noise uh traveled towards the city. And I think that's the difference in what caused that issue of why Bandimere was a problem, yet someplace like Red Rocks is no issue whatsoever for these individuals. So, because they're really not that far away from each other. I mean, they're not right next to each other, but they're not that far away when you consider it. And they're both outdoor events and both extremely loud. Um, I was disappointed to see Bandimere go, especially because it was one of the most iconic venues in the entire country for the sport of drag racing. Not really a drag racer, but it was just disappointing to see a place like that, especially for Denver to hold an iconic. It's what was one of the things that made Denver unique, and for something that made or the Denver area, I'll say, because it was technically in Morrison. Um, so it was just disappointing and sad to see that go, especially because the family, I thought they were a good family. Um, and I don't think they deserve some of the criticism that they deserved. And I hope that something like this would have saved them, but I can't necessarily guarantee that it would have, especially because local control does not necessarily get affected, and they're pretty explicit about that in this bill. So I'm not 100% sure where to go on this one either way. I'd love to see certain entertainment districts be protected so that way we don't see another Bandimere incident happen one more time. But at the same time, there's a big difference between a situation like Bandimere, where Bandimere had been around for decades and decades and decades. You knew exactly what you were moving into, versus a place like Ford, the amphitheater down in Colorado Springs, where that popped up in an existing neighborhood, where all of a sudden you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and make a lifetime commitment to a home, and then all of a sudden you have to deal with all these concerts that are going into the night and affecting your sleep and affecting your ability to perform at work the next day or whatever's going on in your life. So I definitely see where there are certain situations where local control is important as well. So I'm not 100% on this bill, but I definitely think it's an interesting bill and certainly a more important bill than something like negligent bears food disposal.
Well, what's interesting, folks, I just pulled up the Secretary of State website here while you were talking, Michael, to look at
Hmm.
who, so because you could actually, folks, this is a really useful tool. You might not know about it, but if you just Google search like a Colorado lobbyist search, and you can actually search by bill, so you can type the bill number in there and see who's lobbying in support of the bill and who's against the bill. So, there's some consultant companies, this noise pollution group, this disabled veterans group that opposes the bill. And then you see the people who are supporting it is a lot of these governments are supporting it, which is interesting. Colorado Springs, the Brewers Guild, the Municipal League, City and County of Denver, they're supporting the bill, as well as all these cities: Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, Greeley. So it makes me think that maybe this is giving the cities more power, or it's just kind of rewriting the language. What's interesting is Live Nation is also in favor of it. Live Nation's a concert company, of course, so they support this bill. So I don't know. It's interesting to see. I saw AEG on here as well, but all these towns and all these venue holding corporations supports it. So very interesting. Oftentimes, listening to the committee hearing or talking to the bill sponsors might give you more of the information there. But yeah, AEG presents supports it. And there are some consulting companies who are against it, on the ballot consulting, whoever they are. So interesting stuff to kind of see the bigger picture of who's behind this bill. Like, why did they even think this bill was necessary? Was just making very nuanced changes to our state law. But it's very interesting to see. So it did make it out of one committee hearing, folks, on a vote of 5-2. So we can look back at that and say, okay, two of the Democrats voted against it. Everybody else, most of the Democrats, and then all the Republicans voted for it. So very interesting combination there. And then you can actually go back in and watch that committee hearing, look at the committee hearing report. You can see who showed up to testify on it and against it. Very interesting stuff for you to actually be able to dig in here. And you can even look at the written testimony, like Michael was saying, encouraging people to fill this out. You can read here, these people against the bill. Here's people who live in Ford Amphitheater. They've suffered through 2 years of concerts with noise levels measured at our house over 60 decibels. Find it difficult to carry on conversations, watch TV, and even sleep during many of the concerts. They've given the venue carte blanche to exceed Colorado noise abatement laws. Colorado Supreme Court has recently ruled that local governments must abide by these laws instead of focusing on reducing noise. To abide by these laws, for-profit entities have requested a new law, this bill, to put decisions on noise limits into local government hands. This is exactly what transpired in Colorado Springs, which allowed the excess noise pollution in neighborhoods around the Ford Amphitheater. Please do not allow this bill to move forward and keep the existing noise abatement laws in place. Interesting. So, it's interesting to read the testimony. A lot of people who are against it, a lot of people who live here for an amphitheater are against this bill. That's very, very interesting to see, folks. So that's what's so great about our state legislative website and the lobbyist webpage and all this. If you know where to look, you can go in there and really dig in and kind of see what makes sense, what these people are saying at least, and get your own opinion on it. Ultimately, that's what's important. There's people who are for it because this guy says it helps him as a small musician, because maybe they can avoid the noise abatement laws with the local government support. So interesting stuff, folks. Interesting stuff. I like the idea of local control ultimately, but nonetheless, you can read this about who's for it, who's against it. And very interesting for all these people who live near the Ford Amphitheater, who are so upset about it that they're actually writing into the state legislature to tell them about their experience. And I think that shows that's a huge impact it's had. Because, folks, it takes a lot to get people to get up and send a letter in, right? Like, to be like, hey, this bill, here's what's happening with Ford Amphitheater. I got to let the legislature know because this has been a disaster. So, like, they're motivated, you know what I mean? So that makes me pause a little bit and say maybe we shouldn't be doing this. I don't know. But interesting stuff, folks. You can listen to the testimony here on Tuesday, April 14th in the House Transportation and Local Government Committee. If you click in there, and then all you do is click listen, and it'll show you on that day. It'll show you, here it is. You can click in, you can live stream it, you can watch it. There's timestamps. So it really gives you an opportunity to have a voice, to get involved. But if this is something that you care about, maybe reach out to the legislators, maybe show up at that committee hearing or listen to it online. So interesting stuff, folks. That's what we want to give you every week, is kind of the information maybe you haven't heard of anywhere else, but just want to get this to people's attention. Any more thoughts on this one, Michael?
No, I I appreciate you bringing that up, showing people how to read testimony, because as you can see, you can read the written testimony and see how what people believe already, and it just makes me wonder if a lot of people have already submitted written testimony on this bill, what else are people going to be saying down at the Capitol? And it seems it seems to me like this is going to be a pretty popular, especially when you look at the amount of lobbyists that are either monitoring, opposing, or supporting um, this bill. You also see all of the written testimony coming in. I think this very well might be one to watch just because it's gonna in my opinion, I think this is gonna be an interesting one. Not necessarily because I don't think it's gonna have devastating consequences on the entire population of Colorado. I think if this one doesn't pass, everything's gonna stay the same. But what's going to be interesting is how, if this does pass, what other opportunities might be able to um, exist in Colorado from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Now, there might be, as you saw, there might be some consequences that may be kind of negative for some people, especially some families that live in those areas. But at the same time, is it going to be a is this going to be a bill that's going to allow certain um, opportunities to continue to exist, if not begin to thrive, because they are allowed to continue to entertain, host concerts, etc. So I'm kind of I'm kind of curious where this bill is going to what the consequences of this bill passing are going to be, whether that's going to be positive or negative. I know the word consequences sounds negative all the time, but what I'm just trying to say is I'm very curious what's going to happen, and I definitely want to be monitoring this one as the week goes on.
Definitely worth tuning into, and I'll try and listen to this one as well. So follow Free State Colorado there, and I'll do my best there. So Tuesday in the Senate Finance Committee, folks, at 2 p.m. And we're not even covering all the bills, folks. If you're just joining us, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Love seeing all the comments in the chat. But we're just kind of highlighting some of the bigger bills, some of the most important ones. Now, this bill we have talked about before, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But this is Tuesday, April 14th, 2 p.m. Senate Committee Room 357th, so third floor at the state capitol. Interesting bill. They were supposed to cover it last week. Obviously, with a lot going on, they didn't get to it. That committee hearing either got delayed or changed. But this is the property tax minute modifications bill. We talked about it last week, so I won't get into it now. But basically, folks, this bill is just going to allow more taxes, right? More lodging taxes, local municipalities, the ability to put more taxes on the ballot. Don't like that. Don't really like that whatsoever. This is its first committee hearing. Of course, we have Mike Weissman and Yara Zokai, two of the extreme far left pro-government authoritarians in our state legislature, and they're coming in saying, "Yeah, let's give these local governments the ability to raise more taxes." They also changed a little bit, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, some of the homestead exemption laws and a few different things. So it'll be interesting to pay attention to this one. I probably expect amendments on this, but just the idea of like, let's keep nickel and diming people, especially Colorado's struggling tourism industry. Let's put more lodging taxes up here and there. So bad bill. Any other thoughts on this one, Michael?
Uh, I would just say this is a good one. If you, good one to know. This is a good one to share. This bill. I don't know how many of you know people that run an Airbnb, or they have a mother-in-law, or they rent out a room through Verbo, Airbnb, etc. But this is absolutely one of those bills that will affect the local economy, because there's a lot of people out there that might rent a room out through Airbnb. They might rent a or through Verbo, what have you. And this is going to force this is while this isn't outright banning that act, it's definitely going to make it more expensive. And this bill is intended to hurt those Airbnbs, hurt those Verbos, and make it so that way it might be quote unquote more competitive for a lot of hotels and different places that feel like the ability to rent your own room out, or your own house out for a few months or a few weeks or a few days, it is somehow unfair. When we live in a free society, and if you own property, you should be able to do what you want with it. So, definitely let them know, because this could be make or break, especially when Colorado's got such a fragile economy already.
Yeah, I hate the idea of more taxes. The Coloradans already are. A recent poll just came out this last week, folks. You may have seen it on the news talking about how most Coloradans believe we're overtaxed, and that's a nonpartisan. That's all part. That's bipartisan, all partisan levels. People who are not politically, you know, partisan still believe that we're overtaxed, and that is so true. So this bill, to say we want more taxes, and then it does other things too, which we're supposed to have a single subject rule, folks, here in Colorado, but basically this bill messes with county lodging tax, the qualified senior primary residence property tax benefit, the business personal property tax reimbursement. So it makes all these different changes here, which is not necessarily a good thing because then it's like there's three parts to the bill. Ultimately, that shouldn't be how it is. It should be each part individually. It should be its own bill. But unfortunately, that's what these legislators are allowed to get away with. Unfortunately, here. So yeah, bad bill. Ultimately, I would say something to pay attention to, be concerned with. The other one in this committee, folks, this is the one we talked about at the beginning, Senate Bill 26155. Yep, there they are, Brown and Mullica. There, they, them, Kyle Brown, Julie McCluskey, Speaker of the House, and Kyle Mullica, some of the worst, most destructive legislators we've seen in recent years. And this is the bill, folks. You got to look it online and see like their little press conference and all their social media posts about how they're going to lower insurance costs. And it's like, you just know, folks, that none of these people are going to do anything to lower the cost of anything except lower the cost of government intervening in our lives. That's ultimately what it is. So you can read through here, folks. How are they going to lower taxes when this bill has a fiscal note that shows they're going to pull an additional $30 million out of the economy in this coming budget year, right? In this budget year, $30 million in new state revenue. $15 million in new state revenue, $16 million all projected, $18 million. So they're going to, where's this revenue coming from, folks? You don't lower taxes and get a bigger revenue piece, usually, at least not how they're calculating these fiscal notes, right? So they're going to take all this money, $30 million this next year, and then they're going to go put it in a special fund. So this bill establishes the Strengthened Colorado Homes Enterprise in the Division of Insurance and the Department of Regulatory Agencies to assist homeowners in retrofitting residential property against extreme weather events. And they're claiming that if they help these help these homeowners get their houses retrofitted to protect them against fires, that it's going to help everybody lower their insurance rates. I just don't think it's going to work that way, especially when you're charging a fee on insurance companies. So check this out. This enterprise is a type 1 entity governed by a 7-member board who must adopt rules, administer the new program, and assess fees on insurance companies that offer multi-peril homeowners insurance policies in the state. Beginning in 2027, the bill directs the enterprise to impose an annual fee on certain insurance companies equal to 0.5% of the premiums collected by the insurer on a multi-peril homeowners insurance policies during the previous year. The enterprise may also request the Department of Insurance to impose a civil fine or penalty on insurers that violate these provisions. So, folks, you're adding a new tax, and that's what this is. It's a tax on insurance companies with additional paperwork, additional regulatory requirements. That increases costs. That makes it harder for these insurance companies to do business in Colorado. That's why this is going to actually increase costs for insurance. It's not going to lower the cost, folks. Fee and penalty revenue are deposited into the newly created Strengthen Colorado Homes Enterprise Fund, which is continuously appropriated to the enterprise. The enterprise may also issue revenue bonds so they can go into debt, accept gifts, grants, and donations for the program administration. They're going to award grants to homeowners for retrofitting residential property against extreme weather events. They may develop policies, determine eligibility, contract with third-party administrating entities. So there's the grift. Now you have another company that's going to have their hands in the cookie jar here, perform audits on application, and award grants. The bill may also award up to 25% of available grant funding to individuals for resilient roof installation training and certification. Homeowners receiving grants must have an insured residential property, obtain construction permits, comply with building codes, arrange inspections, construct a roof with resilient materials that meet certain standards, and use a licensed contractor. Recipients may also use awards to repair roof damage caused by an extreme weather event. Yep, there you go, folks. So yeah, this is not going to lower costs. It's going to increase costs, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, folks. If you're charging insurance companies an additional $30 million every year or in its first year, that makes insurance more expensive. It's as simple as that, folks. What do you think, Michael?
I think this bill is going to hurt a lot of insurance companies. There's a lot of insurance companies out there that um, I don't know how familiar people are with the insurance industry, but you've got two main types of insurance business models. One, you've got the captive agency. For example, We can talk about State Farm, Farmers Insurance. Um, these are what's called captive agencies, where your insurance company is exclusively working with State Farm. All you can sell is State Farm. And then you've got brokerages. Well, what happens is a lot of times these captive agencies, corporate headquarters will make determinations of, do we want to sell in this state? And if not, we're going to raise the rates dramatically. And what I'm concerned about is this is going to hurt a lot of those captive agencies, so that way they're no longer competitive, and it's going to put a lot of captive agencies out of business. And in turn, what's going to happen is it's going to incentivize people to go to brokerages, because brokerages, the way they work, I know a lot of people are familiar with brokerages, but just in case you're not, what happens is a broker is basically like a representative on your behalf, and they have a list of different insurance companies that they get to work with. They're not captive to that one insurance agency that they have to sell for. They can shop you around. So let's say, for example, you have so that way they can find a better insurance program for you. So, and that also means that if at a later date that good deal that you're getting on your insurance premium um, ends up going away because that company no longer wants to work with you, your insurance broker can say, "Hey, you know what? I've got this other company that I'm working with. They can give you an even better rate. Let me get you in contact with them so that way we can lower your insurance premiums." So that's something that is a big advantage of using brokerages. And I think a bill like this is actually going to harm the captive agencies even more. So that way it's going to give an even bigger advantage to the brokerages. That being said, I would use it. Me personally, I like the insurance broker model for a lot of different reasons, because that's what brokers do. They like, whether you're talking about insurance, mortgages, etc. They're going to shop around and they're going to try to find you the best deal. So but at the same time, I think this is going to be a negative. This is at the end of the day harming consumer choice, and taking away, and it's going to impact the free market in a negative way. So definitely don't like this bill. We've seen, as you said, Kyle Brown push this in the past. He pushed this last year. He's pushing it again, and if this doesn't pass this year, I could definitely see him pushing it next year as well.
Yeah, and it's just so crazy, folks, because you see all these legislators and these senators talk about lowering insurance costs, and it's like you just know the rest of the story here, folks. So it'll be very interesting to pay attention to this one. I'm curious to see what the insurance companies say when they sent if during the committee hearing. Of course, this is more bureaucracy. It's a whole nother little government entity, where they're gonna have this extra all this staff working on these programs and a huge pot of money that they're getting from our insurance companies that they're charging this tax on to go to where these people want it to go. And that's ultimately wealth redistribution. And it's not how things really work or should work in our society. So bad news, folks. That's for sure. So definitely encourage people to show up and oppose this one, especially if you have any information on the insurance. Like Michael kind of gave a good breakdown on it. And yeah, interesting stuff, folks. Bad news, that's for sure. But keep an eye out on this one. That's we'll keep you updated as we go. And here I just found it. I just wanted to pull this up real quick, and let me pull it over here. This is that Colorado House Dems on X saying Speaker McCluskey and Rep. Kyle Brown are introducing a bill that will save Coloradans money on property insurance, protect homes from wind and hail damage. And I read the press release. They don't even tell you what the bill number is. You can't go look it up yourself. Here's what McCluskey said, the Speaker of the House. The legislation we're revealing today will help homeowners protect their properties from hail damage to lower premiums for everyone, stabilize Colorado's property insurance market, and reduce housing costs to Coloradans. Hail risk makes up over half the cost of the homeowner premiums in Colorado, which is why we're introducing legislation to increase fortified roof installations to reduce property damage and lower premiums. I asked right then that day, what's the bill number? Somebody said, what's this going to cost us? It says every time these guys introduce a bill to save us money on our property taxes go up. Yeah. So this is not going to lower property taxes or our property insurance. It's going to raise property insurance. And then they think downstream they're potentially going to have some sort of benefit. So that's how it works, folks. Wealth redistribution, rob Peter to pay Paul, make profitable businesses pay the cost so you can try and work around the system. It's not going to work. It's not going to lower costs. Come on. Come on. Also on Wednesday, folks, this is one of the best bills we've seen this year. Really encourage people to show up and speak for this one. The House Judiciary Committee, Wednesday, April 15th, tax day at 1:30 p.m., House Committee Room 107. Representative DeGraff is one of our most pro-liberty legislators that we have, and he is teaming up with Assistant Minority Leader Jennifer Bacon to reform Colorado's outdated civil asset forfeiture laws. Civil asset forfeiture, if you don't know, is a process in which a law enforcement can legally rob you. You get pulled over with, 5 grand in your pocket. They can assume it's for nefarious purposes, that you violated the law, and just confiscate your money without you being found guilty in a criminal court. It's totally anti-American. It's really bad stuff, folks. So here's the quick bill summary here. This bill requires that defendants in forfeiture proceedings be appointed legal counsel upon request, and creates a cash fund to pay for attorney fees. It also changes the distribution of forfeiture proceeds as outlined before. Now, law enforcement loves civil asset forfeiture because it gives them more money. They can take money, they can take property, they don't need a criminal conviction, and they can just basically steal it. Current law allows for circumstances when a law enforcement agency may retain seized property without a criminal conviction. That is insane, folks. That should not be allowed whatsoever. If you are not criminally convicted of a crime, law enforcement should not at all be legally able to keep your property. The bill requires a criminal conviction to be entered against a defendant for a law enforcement agency to retain the forfeiture assets. That should not be controversial whatsoever. Right? It's like, okay, yeah, maybe you're some big drug dealer, drug lord guy, and yeah, you're driving around the Lamborghini and they confiscate it, but you've been found guilty in a court of law. Okay, fine. You got all these proceeds from the criminal enterprise. Let law enforcement keep it, use it to prevent more crime. Fine. That's fine. But unless you're convicted in a criminal court, they should not be allowed to do that, because you're innocent until proven guilty. The bill also requires a plaintiff to prove that a deceased owner of the seized property was involved in criminal acts. So it creates this idea of an innocent owner. Great. Defense counsel in forfeiture cases. The bill establishes a right for defendants to be represented by counsel during forfeiture cases. It's crazy we don't have that now, because even people who are arrested have a right to an attorney, public defender. Courts must appoint an attorney to represent any defendant who requests legal representation. This attorney must either be a private attorney or defendant self-representation, so no public defender there. Upon request for counsel, the forfeiture proceeding must continue for at least 21 days unless counsel waives this requirement. Attorney costs are paid from the newly created Forfeiture Defense Counsel Fund. Compensation for forfeiture defense funds cannot exceed $3,500 unless the court finds good cause to pay a higher amount. If the defendant prevails in the forfeiture case, the plaintiff must reimburse costs for the defendant's attorney's fees, including those from the fund. So it goes on from there, folks. But basically, I think this is the key here. The bill clarifies that after July 1st, 2026, the seizing law enforcement agency may only retain any proceeds from the sale of forfeited property for the cost of storing the seized property and cost of the district attorney for prosecuting the forfeiture proceedings. So there needs to be strict limitations and guardrails, folks, on this idea of when law enforcement can keep our money. Here's this background here. Check this out. The Department of Local Affairs, DOLO, reports that total forfeited assets were valued at $9.8 million in 2024. Wow. These amounts came from seized assets in 754 federal, state, local, and multi-jurisdictional cases. Of these, 325 cases were handled in state court rather than federal court. The fiscal note assumes half these state cases will reimburse private attorneys and that they'll be awarded the maximum allowable amount. The fiscal note also assumes that law enforcement agencies will seize a similar amount of assets in future years as the 2024 total, resulting in $209,000 available for the Forfeiture Defense Counsel Fund that otherwise would have been paid to contractors for the Behavioral Health Administration. So interesting stuff, that's for sure, folks, but really encourage people to show up and testify on this one. We're going to see law enforcement come out opposing to this, of course, because they love their civil asset forfeiture. It is wrong, for sure, for the law enforcement to keep people's property without a criminal conviction. So really encourage people to show up, speak in support of this bill. This is a good pro-liberty bill that we'd love to have people show up and speak. And folks, if you can't make it, email, call. House Judiciary members, you can go on the website here, go to committees at leg.colorado.gov. You can find House Judiciary right here, and you can email every single one. There they are. And I got to say, it's worth talking to the Republicans about this because, a lot of these law and order Republicans, they want to support the police, and sometimes they support them on bad policy decisions like civil asset forfeiture. So it's really good to shore up. We got Cecilia Espinoza, Chad Clifford, he's a cop or former cop. You got some of these other Republicans here who might be on the side of law enforcement, even though this is definitely, they should be on the side of the people in this in this situation. So really encourage people, please show up to testify. Please Zoom in if you can. Show up in person Wednesday, April 15th at 1:30 p.m. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I want everybody to think about their guns when it comes to this issue. Um, let's say you and a few friends, or you and your family, are driving up to the mountains to go camping, and you decide to go in through Lyons from the Denver area, and you have to drive through Boulder. Well, one thing we all know about Boulder is not too fond of guns. And something happens, you get pulled over, and the officer in Boulder sees your guns. Well, what can do? Boulder a police officer can see that gun and go, "Huh, I don't like that. I'm going to assume you're going to do something wrong." And they have the impetus to take your weapons away. And that's something that can absolutely happen. The same thing can happen through Denver itself. I want people to be very concerned when it comes to stuff. I know when it comes to law enforcement, it's a very, very tricky issue. It requires a lot of nuance. The first people we're going to call when we have something happen to us is law enforcement. If, let's say, we've talked about stalkers in the past. Let's say a stalker comes to our home and tries to commit harm. We're going to be calling the police. So there's a lot of issues. So that doesn't mean I'm dumping on law enforcement whatsoever. I'm not. But there has to be a delicate balance between what's going on with law enforcement and our rights. I mean, both have to be protected at the same exact time. And I think understanding that we are innocent until proven guilty should absolutely apply to our property as well, our private property, like our weapons. That's something that should not be questioned whatsoever. And I think our law needs to do more to enforce that aspect. I mean, absolutely. I want to protect our officers do get dumped on a lot. So and especially in Colorado, we covered some bills where they are trying to attack our law enforcement and put them in a very precarious position through 1276. So I definitely don't want that to happen. But at the same time, I definitely think that there's a lot of issues with what's going on with certain practices with our country and law enforcement. So I definitely would love to see somebody look at something like firearms and our weapons and say, okay, we need to be able to protect our Second Amendment with um, with our Fourth Amendment as well. We need to be able to recognize that due process affects all aspects of our rights as well. It's not just our own person, but our property rights as well. So if we down to the Capitol and support 1250, that'd be fantastic.
Definitely great bill, and especially Representative DeGraff. I mean, he has been such a freedom fighter. If you pay attention, folks, you know he's one of the best we got. So when he's down there fighting for our rights, we need to show up and support him. That's one of the big things too. Even if the bill, this bill has a really good chance of passing because there's one of the Democrat leadership members are on this bill. But nonetheless, folks, these are our people like Ken DeGraff are fighting for us, right? We need to go and support them. They're doing every single day. DeGraff's down there fighting for our rights and our freedom. The least we could do is, take a few minutes to reach out to the committee, to send an email, to make a phone call, to do a Zoom testimony to support this good bill and show him we appreciate all his efforts because we definitely need more like him. So very important bill, folks. This Wednesday, April 15th at 1:30 p.m. House, and then let's jump over to Thursday, folks. We're almost there. This is the last day of the week for interesting bills going through that we've seen so far. So, House Finance Committee, Thursday, April 16th, upon adjournment of the State House Committee Room 112. Another wealth redistribution scheme here with the transfer of unsold insurance premium tax credits. Check this out here, folks. This is just one of those things. Currently, the state treasurer may sell a limited amount of state insurance premium tax credits only to insurance companies. This bill permits non insurance entities to purchase these credits from the state treasurer and resell them to insurance companies. Each credit may be resold only once, and the bill requires both the purchasing insurance company and the non insurance entity to notify the state treasurer of the transaction. So the background is here beginning in fiscal year 25-26, this is currently ongoing. These bills, they're B bills, so they're from the special session last year, authorize the state treasurer to auction up to $250 million in insurance premium and corporate income tax credit certificates. Credits may be sold only to insurance and corporate entities. The bill only changes the requirement that insurance premium credits must be sold to insurance companies. The state treasurer may also engage an independent third party to conduct or advise on the bidding process. So, I mean, they're selling tax credits. They're doing this in a way to move money around. Interesting stuff, folks. I don't know the details on this, but I don't like it. Is all I can say, here. The idea that, they're going to game the system here where these people can sell these to stop paying, to trade, horse trade. It's interesting stuff, that's for sure. What do you think, Michael?
No, I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's kind of like it's a creative way to not only pick winners and losers in the market, because that's what you're doing with these tax credits. You're giving a certain amount of tax credits away, but then you're saying, hey, if people don't really want these tax credits, we're going to allow other individuals to buy these tax credits as well. What happens when you get that initial cash injection and then it's time to pay the piper? Because we remember, as we all know, and we've been covering the budget deficit for a few years now. um, these tax credits are going to create an additional budget deficit, because what you're doing is you're basically paying now to not have to pay later when you purchase a tax credit. So what we're doing is we're basically robbing Peter to pay Paul when it comes to these weird bills that are coming up in special session. Because remember, if you look at this, you can see House Bill 25B-1004. That tells us that this bill was passed during the special session in 2025, which was last year. Um, Yet now we're turning around in 2026 and we're introducing another piece of we're passing some more, or not passing, but we're introducing more um, more bills to fix and change what was already pushed and passed during a session. Special session's only supposed to last 3 days. This one went like, I think, 10 days, if I remember correctly, which is way too long. But with everything going on, that still was not enough time to properly vet this bill, because if that was the case, we wouldn't be introducing this bill here. And you can tell this bill was introduced by Democrats, not Republicans, in a heavily controlled Democratic state. So there, once again, we're running around trying to create issue. We're basically creating problems down the road to fix to basically put band-aids over current problems. So another terrible bill. And this bill's going to end up causing more issues down the road, and we're going to need to end up creating more legislation to fix what 1346 introduced into the legislature if it passes. So another bad bill. Super crony. You also we're going Another thing about this is creating specific contracts to sell these tax credits as well. So that's another problem that this bill has, because there's a little bit of grift opportunity in this bill as well. So terrible bill. Hate to see bills come up like this, and it's only because we have such a terrible one-sided legislature who doesn't understand the free market and the consequences of their own actions.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy that they have these tax credits, right? Which means they're getting taxpayer money back. And then apparently they weren't selling enough of them. They were trying to sell them, I guess, so the state government could get more money to create a market for them. And then they weren't buying enough. So, like, well, let's let more people buy them. I looked up Liberty Scorecard here. Wonderful organization there, folks. Great resource. Liberty Scorecard says about House Bill 1346, they oppose the bill because this bill expands a politically engineered tax credit scheme instead of ending it. Letting the Treasury sell unsold insurance premium tax credits to outside entities creates a secondary market and special favors, inviting more deal making and market distortion. And I couldn't agree more when you put it that way. So, what is our state government doing here, folks? They're just basically, moving money around, and yeah, it's just not the proper role of government whatsoever. Also in the same committee, folks, House Bill 1119 is an interesting one here from Woodrow and Hendrickson. Two of the worst down there. It doesn't even have a fiscal note yet. This bill was introduced very recently here on, actually, it was introduced, wow, back in February 4th, but is getting its first committee hearing now. So that's another sign here that this is a bad bill. Section 2 of the bill allows local governments in certain special districts authorized to impose property taxes to tax certain land and improvements thereon at different mill levy rates, provided that the mill levy rate for the improvements is less than or equal to the mill levy rate for the land. A local taxing entity may not impose different mill levy rates for agricultural land, land use for renewable energy production, land subject to a perpetual conservation easement, leaseholds, and lands producing oil and gas, producing mines, or non producing mining claims or state assessed land. Nothing in Section 2 allows a local taxing entity to impose property taxes on the assessed value of the land and the assessed value of improvements thereon at different mill levy rates in a manner that is not consistent to Section 20, Article 10 of the state constitution. That's our Taxpayers' Bill of Rights Tabor, or any statutory limitation on the local taxing entity's mill levy rates or total property tax revenue. Section 3 requires boards or county commissioners or other local taxing entities to include with their certifications on all property tax levies the individual certification for any local taxing entity required by Section 5 regarding the different mill levy rates used for land and land improvements thereon by the local taxing entity. Section 4 updates the tax and levy rate information required to be made publicly available to include the specific different mill levy rates used for the land improvements thereon, if applicable. Section 5 modifies the duty of the local taxing entities to certify their property tax levy to the Board of County Commissioners to require any local taxing entity that imposes property taxes on the assessed value of the land, the assessed value of improvements thereon at different rates, as allowed by Section 2, to specify those mill levy rates in the local taxing entity's certification of its levy. Now, don't get me wrong, the idea that maybe they could say, hey, we're not going to charge quite as much on your land because even though it's doesn't have the kind of improvements on it, so maybe we can lower your taxes. I think that's a good idea. But ultimately, folks, I'm sure that's not the intention of this bill. They want to basically create a more complex tax system that says, hey, if you have special improvements or certain land improvements on your property, then can have different mill levy rates. So it's not just the assessed value of the property, right? Because your value changes for your property taxes. If your home has, 5 bedrooms instead of 4, 3 baths instead of 1, it's going to be more valuable. So the assessor is going to have an assessed value for your home that's higher. Let me get my language right here. Your assessed value would be higher of your house, right? So you'd be paying more property tax. Well, that's not enough for these legislators. They also want to say maybe we have different rates depending on what's going on there. So it's kind of a complex bill. I definitely need more information on it, but I don't like the idea that they're going to mess with the taxing rates for local governments to try and impose potentially more taxes. So often, folks, the legislative declaration at the beginning of the bill, if it has one, not every bill does, gives you some information about the intention of the bill. So this is what the bill authors here said. Two of our horrible Democrats in our legislature said that Colorado faces a severe housing shortage, with the state estimated to have a housing deficit, blah, blah, blah. More than 1 in 3 Colorado households are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on housing. More than half of Colorado's renter households are cost burdened. Yep, we all know that. Median monthly mortgage payment has increased a bunch. Yep, we know that. Rising land costs are a significant driver of housing unaffordability. That's for sure. Um, High land costs create significant barriers to housing development as developers struggle to make projects financially viable. Creating a partial building exemption will reduce this barrier to housing, making it easier to build and finance new housing development. The value of land. So this is a value. This is what, gosh, what do they call it? I saw Henriksen posting about this on X about having
Land
this.
value tax?
Yeah, land value tax is what they're pushing here. The value of land is determined primarily by its location, the amenities and services surrounding it, factors created by the community rather than by any ingenuity, investment, or initiative of the landowner, whereas the value of the building reflects productive investments made by property owners. When governments invest in public services, the resulting increase to nearby land values is captured by private landowners rather than reinvested for the public benefit, creating windfall wealth increases for landowners. Wow. Whose contributions to such improvements are substantially outweighed by the increased cost of housing for workers and families. Wow. Well, a shift towards the property tax system where all buildings and improvements are exempt and only land is taxed is administratively and politically unrealistic in the short term. One simple step in that direction is allowing
Hey, Brandon, are you there?
Zoom crashed, I guess.
All of a sudden, I saw your face just stop, and yeah,
Folks, are we still live or not? I guess is the question there.
I see you.
All right. Well, I guess we're still live, folks. Thanks for bearing with us. I'm glad that YouTube didn't shut down the live stream, even though Zoom crashed out for a minute there. So exciting stuff there, folks. Let me pull up the screen again. Yeah, interesting stuff. Don't know why that happened. Maybe something with internet or what. I don't know. Don't know. But thanks for sticking with us here. Um, so interesting stuff here, folks. Complicated subject, that's for sure. On this, I don't like the idea of necessarily. I don't know. It's interesting, I guess. It's interesting, but basically saying that you have this split rate property taxation, which taxes land at a higher rate, while providing partial exemptions, provides economic incentives for productive investment. I don't like the idea of them penalizing people. So basically, that seems like the idea here, right? That they're penalizing you for not building on your property, right? That's the part that kind of, I don't know, it's social engineering in a way, right? Because you have these local governments who will then say, okay, listen, you do what you want, what we want you to do with your property, and we will tax you less. If you do what we want, your taxes change depending on that. So I don't know about that necessarily. Not entirely sure about this whole idea, but they supposedly say that split rate property taxation incentivizes more efficient land use development patterns by encouraging construction on vacant lots, infill development, and higher density construction in areas with existing infrastructure, thereby reducing urban sprawl, lowering per unit land costs, and minimizing environmental impacts associated with development on the urban fringe. Research and experience jurisdictions that have implemented split rate property taxation demonstrate that this policy can meaningfully boost housing construction while simultaneously reducing tax burdens for the majority of property owners who invested in improving their land. And then it goes into some history here with Pennsylvania and what they did and urban economics. So, very interesting stuff here, folks. I'm very skeptical, of course, of this idea. I know most people watching this probably want to see property taxes abolished. So I don't know what this would mean exactly. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this. I think this is going to continue. This is going to be one step towards the 15-minute city initiative. I mean, one of the things they do not want to see us do in the legislature is hold on to vacant land. If we have land, they kind of see that as a negative thing. And if we do, and and if we do, if anything, if we are forced to have land like, by their standards, they want to force us to do anything we can to um, build on it and make improvements as they see fit. We've seen other steps towards this year. I know Titone and Velasco also introduced a bill that we talked about. I believe it was it 1036, 1037, something like that. I can't remember which number that was at this point, but we saw that fail where they were basically trying to force they were trying to use government force to compel businesses to make certain improvements. But at the end of the day, they don't have a right to tell us what to do on our property, and that's what they're trying to do. Also, the whole idea of a split use tax basis is going to make our make local tax code even more complicated than it already is, especially when it comes to our mill levies. So we're going to have different mill levies depending on what we're doing with our own property. Absolutely, I think, in my opinion, that's absolutely ridiculous, and they don't have a right to tell us what to do on our own land. We are free people. We are supposed to be a free society, and that's not. This is not a bill that free societies enact, in my opinion.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And I apologize, folks. I think it's my Wi-Fi connection here. But Liberty Scorecard does oppose bill, saying that it expands local new complexity in property taxation without clear evidence of necessity or benefit, risks distorting incentives for property investment and development, lacks guardrails to protect taxpayers from unintended shifts in tax burdens. So I could see some negatives here. Doesn't sound great, but yeah, there we go. So interesting bill. It'll be very interesting to hear the committee discussion this Thursday, April 16th in the House Finance Committee. So pay attention to this one, folks. We'll see what they say. We'll see what happens there. So perfect. Let's continue on, folks. Sorry about the internet there. We'll keep moving it here. Keep moving along here. That's what's going on in the committees this week. So lots of interesting bills being heard, lots happening. Let's talk about some of the updates on the biggest bills of the year, folks. So there's a lot of bills you may have heard of in the news, you may have heard about in weekly past live streams or seen on social media. We're going to do a quick little lightning round here and just give you an update. Went through and updated this list earlier today. So every single bill you're seeing, this is the most up-to-date information. The bills that have already gone to the governor, bills that have failed, been postponed indefinitely in committee hearings, and then bills that are scheduled for future weeks. So let's go ahead and jump in. How does that sound, Michael?
Sounds great.
Okay, perfect. We're just going to go through these here pretty quick. I'll start first. Good bill, House Bill 1030. We're starting with a few good bills we like here. House Bill 1037. The Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act. Great bill. Not no date yet. This bill did go through the members discussed, individuals were able to discuss and have testimony from the community. But at the same time, they did not vote on this bill because there's a lot that potentially could change with it. So no date yet. We'll definitely keep you updated on this great bill from Representative DeGraff.
Senate Bill 71, use of surveillance technology by law enforcement from Senator Zamora Wilson. This was unfortunately laid over in the Senate Judiciary. Um, and we do not have a date as of yet for this to be heard.
Senate Bill 70. Yeah, these two bills from Linda Zamora Wilson are phenomenal bills. They are still going through the process. People, please reach out to your state senator. Tell them to support both Senate Bill 71 and Senate Bill 70. Good bills, both going through the process. No dates as of yet.
House Bill 1048, back to school sales holiday tax. This was a good bill by Rep. Winter and Senator Pelton, Byron Pelton, that is, because there's also Senator Ron Pelton. Uh, this was heard in the House Committee on Finance and passed as referred to Senate Finance, excuse me, not Finance, but Appropriations. Excuse me. Yeah, there is no date as of today for appropriations on this bill.
Senate Bill 22 to kind of slow down some of these crazy emission goals. The goal here is they want to ban basically natural gas and gasoline. So this is a good bill to try and put some saying, hey, listen, that's not possible. No date as of yet. We'll keep you updated on Senate Bill 22.
House Bill 1140, local government impact hearings. This will be heard tomorrow in the House on second hearing. It passed first committee and onto the House floor.
Yep. And even though they say tomorrow, folks, they don't necessarily get to second readings on Mondays. So at some point during the week, we might hear this bill, but some of these bills end up getting delayed even further. House Bill 1246 from Representative Graff, a good pro energy bill, did get laid over in the committee hearing. So we'll see for a final vote and any new amendments to that bill. No date as of yet. 1246.
Senate Bill 108, transparency of legislative groups' money. There is no date as of today. This is one of those bills that was introduced as a result of some infighting between progressive caucuses as well as more moderate caucuses on the Democratic House side related to a certain luxury paid expense trip for one Main Street caucus members.
Senate Bill 91, exclusion of newspaper deliverers as employees. Good bill. No date as of yet, sitting over in appropriations like so many of these bills are.
Senate Bill 90, exempt critical infrastructure from right to repair. This is already this is waiting to be heard on third reading and final passage tomorrow in the Senate chamber.
Senate Bill 137, measures to reduce administrative burdens. This is a good bill that the Chamber of Commerce is supporting to kind of roll back some regulations, have some mandatory review of department rules here. So really to slow down, repeal some regulations that are outdated. Good bill is going through the Senate, possible Senate third reading vote tomorrow, Monday, April 13th, and it moves on to the House. Over to the bad bills. A lot more of the bad bills than the good bills, that's for sure, folks.
House Bill 1033, expanding the Colorado Cottage Foods Act. This is also called the Tamale Act. Uh, Unfortunately, this is a bill that we were really excited for, but lobbyists absolutely gutted this bill and took out all the good parts and added some really terrible stuff. as it passed first committee, and now it is waiting in appropriations with no date.
House Bill 1322, the limited liabilities, no statute of limitations here for civil actions for conversion therapy survivors, did pass the House, is now on to the Senate. No date as of yet.
House Bill 1071, local government vehicle identification service a system on interstate highways. Unfortunately, this is waiting in the Senate on second reading. This has already passed all the way through the House and passed its committee hearing as well.
Yeah, bad bill, more surveillance. Lobbyist regulation bill. This is the one that RMGO is really sounding the alarm on because it could potentially mean citizens, like everybody watching this, could potentially have some sort of new regulations or barriers in order to interact with our local legislators. So bad bill. It did get amended. I believe they took out some of the worst parts of the bill, but nonetheless, definitely worth keeping an eye on. Senate Bill 147. No date yet. Sent over in appropriations.
Senate Bill 87 create legislative job leave protection for general assembly members. This is passed the House initially. This has passed the Senate, then it passed the House, and now it is waiting on consideration of adherence. Basically, that means that there needs to be a committee between the House and the Senate because the House and Senate did not agree on the differences that need to take place via amendments. So, more to come on this one. Let's hope this one can die because the Senate and House cannot agree uh, to certain conditions that have been laid upon the bill by the other chambers. So, if we can hopefully see an impasse on this bill, that would be the best bet. If not, let's hope for a governor's veto.
Senate Bill 150, modernizing RTD, the Regional Transportation District. This is the bill that limits the citizen input, the citizen's ability to have an election to determine who's serving on the board, as well as a lot of other changes to RTD, some good, some bad, but it's going into the Senate on second reading probably sometime this week, and then it'll end up going to the House. So keep an eye on this one.
Senate Bill 51, age attestation on computing devices. This is basically another way to force age verification on people who use the internet, especially when it comes to different apps. This was introduced in the this has passed the Senate and introduced to the House, and this has been assigned to the Business Affairs and Labor Committee.
Yeah, bad bill. Really want to keep an eye on this one. House Bill 146. This is the restrict single-use food serviceware distribution. So banning the idea of you getting a plastic fork and spoon from your fast food or restaurant. Being heard Thursday, April 23rd. We'll keep you up to date. We'll talk more about this bill as we get closer.
Senate Bill 5, rights violation immigration enforcement remedy. This is one of the anti-ICE bills that have been pushed as a response to Trump and what's going on with the federal government and ICE. This passed the Senate and it's on to the House. We do not have a date or a commit. It's been assigned to the judiciary, but we don't have a date as of yet.
House Bill 1255, the social media duty to report and search warrants. Did make it out of committee in the House. Will be heard probably on the House floor sometime this week. This bill turns our social media companies into active agents of the state looking for violations and reporting us to law enforcement at the drop of a hat. Bad bill.
House Bill 1221, expenditure adjustments. This is a part of 1221, 1222, 1223, that package deal that we talked about a couple weeks ago with Natalie Minton. These bills were they all passed the House Committee on Finance and referred amended to appropriations. No date as of today.
Yeah, three bad bills, that's for sure. OSHA on steroids here, workers for protections for worker safety, House Bill 1054. No date as of yet is sitting over in appropriations.
House Bill 1043, Transportation Network Company discriminatory practices. We've already seen bills like this get vetoed by the governor. This is basically an attack on Uber, who said if stuff like this passed, that they would pull out of Colorado whatsoever. Unfortunately, this passed the House Committee on Finance and referred unamended to appropriations. No date as of today.
Yeah, lots of bills sitting over appropriations, folks, as you can see here. House Bill 1005, this is the Worker Protection Collective Bargaining, the forced unionization bill, eliminating the second election. Jared Polis says he's already going to veto it. It's sitting over in appropriations. We'll see if they leave this one until they get a new governor. Very possible.
House Bill 1126 requirements for firearm dealers. This is the one of those bills that RMGO has been fighting. It is basically, I think they call this the Dealer Annihilation Act. Unfortunately, this has already passed through the House onto the Senate and will be heard to. It is scheduled to be heard in second reading tomorrow in the Senate chamber.
House Bill 1113, the modifications to elections bill, it did make it out of the House. It is over on the Senate now. Did pass its first Senate committee and is in the Senate appropriations. No date as of yet.
House Bill 1114 allowed minimum lot size for subject jurisdiction. This was passed the House, introduced into the Senate, and signed to local government and housing, and will be heard not this Thursday, but next Thursday in the Senate Local Government and Housing Committee.
Voter transparency and ballot measures. This puts new requirements on citizens seeking to get measures on the ballot if they require an expenditure of money. House Bill 1084, bad bill, will be heard probably on the Senate floor sometime this week.
House Bill 1210 prohibits surveillance, price, and wage setting. Another crazy bill from from the progressives, particularly Javier Mabry. This was introduced. This is already passed the House, introduced to the Senate, and assigned to Business, Labor, and Technology Committee with no date as of today.
And 1207 requiring putting new mandates on business owners and businesses, employers across Colorado to report more demographic data to the state. Has made it out of the House, sitting in the Senate, waiting for a committee assignment or a date assignment for the Business Affairs and Labor and Technology Committee. We'll keep an update on that one.
House Bill 1206 improved funding to support development. This is another terrible bill that passed the House Committee on Finance and referred amended to appropriations. No date as of today.
Senate Bill 42, the revenue classification. So changing how they classify certain revenue to make it exempt from the taxpayer's Bill of Rights. Bad news for sure. Is over sitting in the Senate Appropriations Committee. That still has to make it over to the House.
Senate Bill 131, sports betting protections, passed the Senate Committee on Finance and referred amended to appropriations. No date as of today.
The My Colorado Card pilot program, basically using our taxpayer money to pay so that kids can go to museums and all these different things for free. Certain kids, school kids, House Bill 1055, not the proper role of government, passed out of the House Committee on Education, sitting in appropriations right now.
Senate Bill 135, state public K through 12 education funding. This is another attack on Tabor that has passed the Senate Committee um, on Finance and referred as amended to appropriations. No date as of
This
today.
is
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is the bill that would eliminate our Tabor refunds forever and put a lot of that money towards schools and then a lot of it just to whatever the state government wants to put it towards. So bad, bad bill. House Bill 1289, the modifications to certain tax expenditures, just a way for our state to collect a lot of more tax revenue by cutting out all the exemptions that the federal government is giving us for our taxes. Really bad bill. They did remove the precious metals component to this bill that had so much public outcry. They actually removed that. It was going to be coins and gold bullion was going to be taxed in Colorado. They did remove that, so that's a good news. Still a bad bill sitting in House Appropriations right now.
House Bill 1065, transit and housing and investment zones. Another bad bill that unfortunately passed the House Committee on Finance, but it was referred as amended to appropriations. No date as of today.
1302, this is the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, CBI, Firearm Instant Check, giving them the ability to operate their hours entirely on their own. This bill did make it out of the House, is over in the Senate. Will probably be debated on the Senate floor sometime this week.
Senate Bill 134, payment card network fees. This is unfortunate. This is unfortunately passed committee, but it has been laid over. Um, and hopefully this gets laid over again tomorrow, but it is currently scheduled to be heard on second reading in the Senate chamber.
And that's the bill, folks. You may have seen a lot of the commercials on or advertisements on about the credit card fees and the payment fees and this and that. So keep an eye on that one. It'll be very interesting to see the debate around that. Senate Bill 43, this is the firearm barrel bill. It keeps getting delayed. They keep laying it over pretty much every single day in the state house. It did pass out of the Senate. We'll see what happens, but expect that probably sometime this week to be addressed, I'm sure. So those are some of the bills we're still tracking, folks. And then these are the bills that have already passed. The legislature and Governor Polis has either signed the rest of these bills or they're sitting on his desk here.
House Bill 1144 prohibit three-dimensional printing, firearm, and components. Unfortunately, passed. This one was gutted in a lot of ways, but they still went ahead and passed this bill. It's currently sitting on Governor Polis's desk.
Senate Bill 18, the legal protections for the dignity of minors. This bill did get amended as well. It's very interesting to see both these bills were amended. So otherwise, Polis was going to veto them. Still a bad bill. Polis will probably sign this one now.
House Bill 1011, transfers of certain pet animals. This is the anti-pet store bill that's going to absolutely kill our pet stores in Colorado. Unfortunately, passed sitting on Governor Polis's desk.
House Bill 1253, the disconnection from statutory municipality. Good bill from Representative Scott Slaw. Actually passed both the House and the Senate now. So good for Representative Slaw to get a bill through.
House Bill 1001. This is basically one of those bills that kind of stomps on local control and has a lot of crony capitalist favorites for certain affordable. How do I want to say this? Afford a lot of affordable housing initiatives and NGOs will get a kickback with a bill like this. Unfortunately, the governor signed this bill.
Senate Bill 4, expanding the list of petitioners for the protection orders, expanding our red flag gun confiscation laws in Colorado. Governor did sign this, unfortunately.
Senate Bill 32, Promoting Immunization Act. This is a terrible bill that is a slap in the face to all the good things that Secretary Kennedy has done on the national side with the FDA. Unfortunately, and we see the governor has signed this bill.
Bills that failed are gone but not forgotten. Decided to keep the leprechaun from our week of St. Patrick's Day. He just is tagging along here. So these are the bills that have failed. Good one. Really excited to see this bill fail. 1148, the protections for youth on social media. This is the bill that would have created a new tax on any any video game transactions, things like that, to fund youth education stuff. But good thing this bill did actually end up failing. So it's good stuff.
House Bill 1212, constitutional carry of a handgun from Reps Flanell and Barone, unfortunately failed.
Yep, another bill that failed. Authorized local electronic ballot return. A lot of concerns about people being able to vote online. This bill did fail.
House Bill 1190, alcohol beverage manufacturer sales. This was a good bill that was going to promote a lot of entrepreneurship through for a lot of alcohol stores or alcohol businesses. This unfortunately failed.
Law enforcement identification, immigration training requirements. This was another sanctuary state bill. This is the bill that law enforcement was saying would put them at odds because they'd have to arrest law enforcement. Federal law enforcement, local law enforcement would have to basically arrest them if they saw them doing some stuff. I mean, it was really a bad bill. It did fail, thankfully.
House Bill 1270. Oh, yeah. Another bad bill. Thankfully failed. Alcohol impact and recovery in prices. It was just all they were going to do was make it more expensive to purchase alcohol. Thankfully failed.
Protections against child rape. Representative Bradley's bill to basically hold these most heinous criminals accountable and keep them locked up. Of course, the Democrats killed this bill. Very sad stuff. House Bill, that's Senate Bill 111.
Thankfully, 1211, the regulation of broadband services failed in committee.
Decriminalize adult commercial sexual activity. This is the prostitution bill. Of course, did fail as well.
House Bill 107, modify the Colorado Open Records Act, thankfully failed.
Yeah, bad transparency bill there. Parent penalties, minor using electric bicycle, that did fail as well. Happy to see that one go.
House Bill 1012, consumer protections to promote fair market pricing, failed, thankfully. Another Zoke terrible bill.
Oh, that one was crazy. That was a crazy bill. The lower taxes on cigars bill from Sullivan did fail.
Senate Bill 106, opt out of mail ballot packets for elections. A great bill from Senator Zamora Wilson, unfortunately failed.
House Bill 1072, the right of firearm possession, elimination of extreme risk protection, red flag gun confiscation orders from Scott's Law, unfortunately did fail.
House Bill 1108, Colorado Bureau of Investigation access federal fingerprint search service, thankfully failed as it was killed by Rep. Hartsook after pushing a anti-gun bill.
The do not abort form did fail as well. House Bill 1085.
Senate Bill 28, removal of wind energy from state energy goals, unfortunately failed.
1021, the Second Amendment Protection Act. That's such a good bill, folks. You should go back and read it because it lists all the anti-gun laws that our state government has pushed. Of course, did fail in committee.
House Bill 1149, legislative committee testimony oath required, thankfully failed. Unfortunately, we're going to see this one come around next year likely, so make sure to be prepared for that one when we do see it in 27.
The Peace Act, the Parental Equality and Child Empowerment Act, good bill from Linda Wilson, did fail as well.
House Bill 1082, Children Aren't for Sale Act. Unfortunately, this failed, but we are thankfully going to see this one on the ballot in 2026. So we have an option. So we are going to have the opportunity to push this one through come November with our own ability to vote in the general election.
Prohibit the use of personal identifying feature. That bill did fail as well. House Bill 1049.
House Bill 1074, Weinberg's attempt to restrict the 120-day legislative session down to 90 days, unfortunately failed.
So we done with the legislative session. How great would that be?
That'd be amazing.
House Bill 1063, Weinberg in his last year there to limit the number of bills introduced by legislators from five down to three would have been a great bill. Unfortunately, the Democrats didn't like that one.
House Bill 1062, expand deduction for retirement benefits. Another good Rep. Weinberg bill where, of all people, Rep. Bob Marshall from Douglas County decided to vote against helping out senior citizens who are retired. Unfortunately, this one failed.
House Bill 1036 thankfully failed. This was the attempt to put taxes on vacant residential property. So if you weren't living in your house, they would have the county assessor drive around, see you're not there enough, and charge you additional taxes. It's kind of the flip side of what Henriksen is pushing with his property tax bill. So this one did fail.
House Bill 1129, gas utility service. Good bill that was unfortunately killed.
Register and drive surplus military vehicles. This is Representative Baron's second year running this bill. I was hoping to make it because it'd be great to have more military surplus options as vehicles we could drive on Colorado roads, but this bill did fail.
House Bill 1087, safeguard minors from sex altering interventions. This is another good bill. This is one of the three Protect Kids Colorado initiatives. Unfortunately, this failed, but we again will be able to vote on this one come November. So make sure to let your friends and neighbors know to vote come November because we do have a chance at saving this state.
Repeal retail delivery fees. Representative Luke's been trying this one for a couple of years now. Of course, the Democrats aren't having it.
House Bill 1128, limitation on gender transition procedure claims, which is ironic that certain types of conversion therapy are considered a great sin by our state, and look no further than House Bill 1322, which is currently being pushed. Yet when you do it the opposite way, it's a terrible sin, and it's terrible sin to even consider that as as something wrong and horrible, and it gets killed, and which was what Rep. Ken DeGraff was trying to do with this bill. This bill was going to This bill was going to allow the legal liability to be expanded to 20 years if someone decided to detransition because they experienced devastating consequences from going through a gender transition as a minor.
House Bill 1105 discuss adoption with pregnant women. I thought this was a good bill because it would save babies' lives. This bill did fail in committee, of course.
House Bill 1083, Protect Female Sports Act. This is the third of the three Protect Kids Colorado bills that is going to be on our November ballot, but this was also killed and introduced by Rep. Scott Bottoms.
House Bill 1209, the temporary decrease statutory property tax revenue limits for Representative Sukla, did fail.
House Bill 1137, Requirements for Campaign Consultants, a bill that thankfully failed. There were some issues on the Democratic side with certain consultants, and which led to this legislation being introduced. But they decided to kill it. The Dems decided to kill this their own bill.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It was a rare bill being defeated on the floor. Usually, bills are defeated in committee hearings, but this bill actually got out of committee, and then the Democrats as a whole didn't like it. Very interesting to see that all play out. And that's all, folks. That's what we got. Really appreciate people sticking with us through my technical issues. Sorry about that. Just Wi-Fi issues. Of course, technology, it is what it is. But folks, we're in the home stretch of the legislative session. Please have a voice. Pay attention to what's going on. Tell your neighbors. We have to turn this state around. The first to be informed, to know what legislation is going through the state capitol, how these legislators are making our lives more expensive, more difficult, restricting our rights. These are important things to know, folks. We have to focus on it. We have to get the word out because otherwise, think about that insurance bill, right? I mean, we see on social media, we see maybe the media pick it up saying, hey, the Democrats are going to lower insurance prices. They're going to talk about that during the election. But if we actually read the bill, we know the truth. We get the other side of the story out there. Say insurance companies, they're taxing insurance companies. Then we tell that side of the story. We combat their narrative and push back on their agenda. And that's what we need to do, folks. So pay attention, tell people what's going on, have a voice. Let's get involved with our state government. It's so important, and we can have a huge impact this year, and this year's election. So I know we can turn the state around. We will be a free state one day, but it's just going to take a lot of work. So really appreciate everybody joining us, sticking it through with technical issues. But yeah, any final thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I just want to say, keep fighting, and remember the most important thing is your voice being heard down at the Capitol, your voice being heard amongst your friends, amongst your neighbors, and then encouraging your own friends and neighbors and your family to get involved as well, because we can't rely on anybody else to save us. You have to save yourself, and we have to get together to help save Colorado. And it's not until we all realize that we have to take that internal uh, initiative to actually make the difference ourselves, then that's what's going to make the difference in Colorado. So it doesn't matter what the parties are doing, but if you know you've got a good candidate, get down and help your local candidate. If you don't have a good local candidate, help another local candidate. Help somebody in a swing district because there's a lot of good opportunities. For example, for uh, Senate District 3, Senate District 11, Senate District 15, Bob Marshall in 43. That's another good one. Liza Hamrick did not have a challenger last year, and she was in a very challenging district. So this year we have Scott Shamblin running. Support Scott Shamblin. There's a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different great districts that for us to make a real difference. And if you don't like those districts, defend some of the swing districts. House District 16, uh, Rep Woog, Rep Dan Woog, I believe he won by only 100 and some votes. There's a lot of opportunity to get your name out there, get your voice out there, and let people know that Colorado is worth saving. And when you make a difference, it goes a long way. So we need more people, not less, speaking out and getting their names out there. And and letting Coloradans know that Colorado's worth saving and Colorado's worth fighting for. So please get out there, make an impact. We absolutely need you. So thank you for spending your time with us this Sunday. There's only a few more weeks left, and yeah, keep looking out because it's going to get crazier and crazier over the last couple weeks until the legislative session's over.
Yeah, we really only have 4 or 5 more of these folks. So keep up to date, pay attention, follow on social media. We'll keep you updated during the week about what's happening with our state government. But yeah, we can turn these things around, but we have to be the leaders we're looking for, folks. Nobody's going to come in and save us. We have to do it ourselves. So appreciate you all. Appreciate you as always, Michael. Appreciate everybody sticking through it here tonight. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
See you, everyone.